आज भारत G20 देशों में फास्टेस्ट ग्रोइंग इकोनॉमी है। दुनिया की तीसरी सबसे बड़ी अर्थव्यवस्था भारत की है।
Have you ever wondered what fuels India's bustling economy? Well, quite literally, it's the fuel. As one of the world's fastest growing economies, India's demand for fuel is soaring, hitting its highest level in 24 years in February 2023. India's growing middle class is hitting the road more than ever, with car ownership on the rise and more people commuting to work. As the economy booms, so does the demand for fuel. But what's really behind this demand, you ask? Let's find out. According to the data released by the Indian Oil Ministry's Petroleum Planning and Analysis Cell, India's demand for fuel hit a record high this February. This is the 15th consecutive year-on-year rise in fuel consumption and the highest demand recorded since 1998. The rise in demand is due to cheap Russian oil and increased industrial activity in Asia's third largest economy. Did you know that Indian refiners are now the biggest buyers of Russian crude oil? They've been buying discounted crude that Western countries have been avoiding since Russia's invasion of Ukraine last year. But here's the twist. Instead of paying in US dollars, Indian refiners are buying their oil through Dubai-based traders using UAE dirhams. Why? Because the traders are worried that they might not be able to trade in dollars in the future. And to make things even more complicated, there is a cap on the price of Russian crude imposed by the G7 nations. This means that even if the oil is headed to countries like India and China, Western companies cannot trade it at above $60 a barrel. India is getting a sweet deal on its imports of Russian crude oil. They're getting a discount of about $15 per barrel, all thanks to Indian refiners who are driving a hard bargain to get the lowest price possible. If the price of Russian crude rises above a certain limit set by the G7 nations, traders will have to find new ways to pay for it. This could actually help Russia in its efforts to stop using the US dollar for trade. The government estimates that despite these challenges, India's fuel demand is expected to grow by 4.7% in the next fiscal year beginning on April 1. Fuel consumption is predicted to rise to 233.8 million tons from the revised estimate of 222.9 million tons for the current fiscal year ending in March. Domestic demand for gasoline, mainly used in passenger vehicles, is expected to rise by 7.1% to 37.8 million tons, while gas oil consumption is projected to grow by about 4.2% to 90.6 million tons. Consumption of aviation fuel is likely to increase by 14% to 8.6 million tons, compared with the revised estimate of 7.4 million tons for the year ending in March 2023. This growth in fuel demand is driven by India's burgeoning middle class and increasing urbanization. As more Indians migrate to cities, the demand for personal vehicles and transportation services continues to rise. In addition, India's expanding economy and industrial activity require a steady supply of fuel to power its operations. To meet this growing demand, India is investing in renewable energy sources like solar and wind power. As well as exploring new oil and gas reserves, the country is also encouraging the use of electric vehicles and biofuels to reduce its dependence on fossil fuels and promote sustainable development. And that is how India's insatiable thirst for petrol, diesel, and jet fuel has reached an all-time high. Thanks to their clever negotiating skills, Indian refiners are quenching this thirst with discounted Russian oil. Traders are facing some payment hiccups, but the Indian government is optimistic about the future. They expect fuel demand to continue to soar, fueled by a growing economy and an unquenchable thirst for mobility.